So picking up where I left off, I'm actually supposed to be on holiday this week, but it had to be cancelled due to COVID. So I really did take the week off, but I just came into the studio, so I thought I'd just do this. Where am I at? Right. So picking up where I left off. So notice again, look at the directions. I'm just going to jump straight into the pen work. So ideally, you'd want to be facing the 55 to get a nice line of universal beauty. So I'm going to turn the tool to give me the top swell on the W. Then I'm going to lift up, turn it back. And this is where it starts this is where your sort of concentration on the accuracy of the variations really come into play. So this W is a hairline stroke, a swell, back to hairline, up, down, back to hairline, up and over, and a little dollop serif. So these serifs vary because, let's just do that W again. Because they can go like so. So I would come over and down and around and back on itself. So it sort of pulls itself in. So the liquid tension is what causes it to form. Some beautiful O's in this period as well. So my O is normally, again, in that parallelogram. These O's tend to be rounder. And I found that I had to plot this a little bit better. So I initially did this, but I needed to go all the way over here. So what I did was I basically traced the path of the O. So I knew that I needed to be here, really quite fascinating shape. Of course, that means that you can also do this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you just have to sort of close that up. So it takes a little bit more accuracy to get to that point. So let's do that again. Yay! Where are we at? So some A's. And we looked at some A's up here, and we saw 3 different variations already. So here are some more A variations. Now, this is quite fascinating because this is much higher than I would do a crossbar on an A. I would generally do the crossbar down here so that you have this balance of volume. When this is done, the stroke tends to be a lot longer and thinner at the top. So you have this really extended area, this curve, which is definitely not on the 55. That is almost a good sort of 30 degrees, which is quite amazing. Some more A variations. We have an X, 1 and 2, and no pressure, and out and over, and pressure, and up, and pressure. So, again, I have to be really careful that I'm not sort of, that I'm not using my own theory of the script, keeping everything on that 55. So this is the 55 here. That's not really on the 55. This is on the same angle as this, and this is just a little bit out. So again, it goes back to that that triangular sort of bounding box. The next set of letters I found really fascinating. Where are we at? I'll need a little bit more space for this, so I'm going to use 3. I loved this here. I thought this here was amazing. Now, when I do an A, my A is ball serif, connective stroke, 55 degrees. So this is a hairline. So when I do this kind of A, I tend to think about the contrast of these two strokes in relation to each other. So even though I've applied pressure here, I've applied very little pressure. Because the pressure is on this side. So you're still sort of mimicking no pressure, pressure. So you have hairline, very little pressure, and the sort of bulk of the pressure is here, because of course the letter A looks like this. So when you look at a Roman A, the first stroke on the left, this stroke is always lighter than the stroke on the right. So by sort of, keeping that kind of relationship with the Roman capital, you get a better sense of the letter. I found this E very difficult to do because this loop is so big. So you really have to sort of, count and think through the loop. And rotate and twist. So that's picked up some of the fibers from the nib because of the turning. So let's do this again, but look at it in a slightly different way. So I don't want to deal with all of this turning the nib. So notice I'm not pressing very hard here. Turning the nib horizontally. And up and over and little ball serif. Really beautiful F. I love this sort of interplay. This is a little bit wider than I would have made it at the bottom, but so look at this, right? So if you were writing this and you weren't being really conscious of the writing, you would probably do this. Okay, so immediately you can see a dramatic difference in the deposition of ink and the width of the line. So I'm being a lot more conscious of the amount of pressure I'm using. Of course, being at the bottom of the page doesn't really help that much. So let's just do a few of these. Much better. So you can see how this is starting to look much more historical. My only problem is it's starting to look like a G and something else. So the delicacy of the line can really influence the shape of the letter. And this is also looking more sort of C-like rather than G-like. Let me just change the sheet. So I'm just using one of my grids that I've developed to write this. It's just a 55-degree grid. All right, let's try and actually get this G to work properly. So what I'm doing is I'm setting up the G. So I'm going to make the G, and I'm also going to have to include the tail. So that's a lot more G-like in its shape. So let's move to the next letter. So the shape I have is a little bit different to this. I just need to sort of think this through because the movement is really important, because this is not horizontal. So and already it's, do you see how this is sort of really splayed? Okay, let's breathe. So the breathing helped to set up the spacing a little bit better. A little problem there. Let's make this just a little bit higher. So these 17th century letters, they're not the easiest things to write because they have a tendency to sort of trick you a little bit. So you have to be really careful with them. I'd like to finish this page, which just takes us to the bottom of these letters. So we have the K. And of course, I sort of devoured so much space. So historically, you would really actually get something more akin to that. So this needs to come in a little bit more. That's much more like it. So you can really see the similarities between this obtuse triangular shape. But the only problem is it has a sort of feeling like an R rather than a K. Up and over. Oh. So I need to set that up to make sure that I have enough space to move in. Now notice these are not the same shape. So this has come up and over and down, and this has come up and around and down. So really, really subtle variations in these shapes. Where are we at? The N. I love this N. I think this N is so funky. Absolutely love it. Now the only problem is this is facing in the wrong direction. And you can also do pressure, release, pressure. I want the reverse comma to be in the same direction as the 55. And already you can see that with this facing here and this facing here and this facing here, the letter sort of pulls together a lot nicer. It sort of holds itself much better. Whew. Now, one of the variations of this is very narrow, go back through and come down. So when you start breaking this down, you can see that this is not a horizontal ellipse. This is tilted, and that's tilted, and that's tilted. So essentially it looks like, how much space I have here? Let's do this again. So it looks to me like 1, 2, and 3. So if we draw some lines through the axis of these shapes, we get a really interesting sort of understanding of how the shape was constructed. 2 more letters. So the 2 letters are the P and the R. Now, really fascinating because that's your cap height, that's your baseline. So you would expect to touch both the cap height and the baseline. And in some instances, what tends to happen is you get this. So this isn't touching the cap height, or you get this. Now, notice how far down this is. I would normally make this a little bit higher. But look at that space. There's quite a lot of space between the line of universal beauty and the bowl. So if I did my P, That's my P, so there's just that much space there. But this is so much longer, this lead-in stroke, and you sort of have this sort of tri-lobed balance. And the R, woohoo, end of the page, yay, is like the P. Little loop, and that's interesting. So if we sort of deconstruct this R, 2 and 3. So let's look at the P that I would do. That's my P. And R. Stay on the 55, keep it horizontal, stay on the 55. Okay, so once you start looking at these, you start seeing, again, that sort of triangular shape. So up and over. And look at where this is facing. So mine is horizontal. This is pointing in that direction. My foot is on the 55, and this foot is off the 55. So again, you're sort of running into these triangular shapes. So that's fascinating because, you know, this 90-degree triangle is parallel to the foot of this R. Let's see if we can add a little bit more geometry into this. So, you know, you're sort of running away from the parallelogram, but you can really see that sort of arithmetic spiral. Sort of giving you the basis for the Fibonacci sequence. Anyway, I'm going to stop there because I could waffle on about this for ages. Thank you very much for your time.